Hello everyone, it is I, the Afro Avenger, back with the first album review for this channel of 2016. I'm sorry it took me a little time to get to here. I had some trouble finding my webcam, but anyways, the first album review of this year is going to be by request, actually by my girlfriend, and it is American Beauty, American Psycho by Fall Out Boy. It was released January 16th of 2015, which is of course now last year. Some chart information: it peaked number 1 on the US Billboard 200, number 1 on the US Billboard Alternative chart, and number 1 on the US Billboard Rock chart. It was released on the labels Island and DCD2, which is Pete Wentz's own record label, and its singles were Centuries, the title track American Beauty, American Psycho, Uma Thurman, and Irresistible. So without further ado, let's get this started. So, months and months ago, my girlfriend requested that I review Fall Out Boy's latest release, American Beauty, American Psycho, being that they're her favorite band, and this was her favorite release of last year. All last year, I had been listening to it with her in the car, thinking about exactly what I want to say about it. If you see my top 10 favorite albums of 2015, you'd know that it was on the list, so that must mean that it's really good, right? Well, let's take a look, shall we? For anyone who's familiar with Fall Out Boy, one of the earliest things you'll notice about this record is how radically different it is from their earlier work, and that's simply to say that it's not as heavy as their earlier work. To go more in-depth, albums like Take This Year, Grieve, and From Under the Cork Tree are much more influenced by genres such as punk and what is known as emo, and it's safe to say that Fall Out Boy has made the same transition that many rock bands are beginning to make, and that's shift into the pop world. Of course, most people would identify Fall Out Boy as a pop-punk band, so why would that be any problem? Same with Blink-182, Bowling for Soup, All American Rejects, 5 Seconds of Summer, Green Day, Paramore, Panic at the Disco, and so on. It all seems inevitable that they would turn more pop, leaving their heavy, angsty punk roots to experiment with other electronic instrumentation. American Beauty, American Psycho takes what Fall Out Boy was doing on Save Rock and Roll with its experimentation on genres and instrumentation and pushes it a bit further, but less into the rock realm and more into the pop realm. From the first track, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that though, but trust me, it'll become more clear as the record advances. The first track is called Irresistible, which is actually quite heavy, mainly in the chorus section. But this is where we get into the interesting stuff. As the track opens and within the verses and chorus, you hear a repeating horn line which loops, and during the chorus, there's an aggressive hi-hat rhythm that's almost reminiscent of the kind of rhythm you'd hear in trap music. It's a strong opener, and quirky little things like this only continue throughout this record. The next track, which is the title track, opens with an ominous music box recording and a dog barking, and then BAM! Right into the chorus. I think the build-up is nice, but unfortunately this track I feel has to be one of the weakest on the album. As many times as I've heard it, it never grew on me. It's pleasantly heavy, even having some influences of barbershop music on the pre-chorus, but the song itself just doesn't feel super creative or original compared to everything else on the album. That's not to say that it's a bad track, it's just weak. It ends the same way it opened with the music box, but unfortunately that was probably the most interesting thing about the entire track aside from the scale work done during the chorus. Leader Patrick Stump has said of the album that he wanted to make a more stylistically cohesive album than Save Rock and Roll, where you could pick any track and it sounds like it's from the same album, while bassist Pete Wentz has said that he wanted to make an album more relevant to pop culture, which of course requires radio airplay but could still be played at small venues. Guitarist Joe Troman explained the album in a very fitting, simple way. Musically, it has hip-hop grooves with guitars on it. Taking all this into account, it makes it much easier to understand the direction the band was going in with this particular project. They deliberately wanted to give it a more poppy sound and stray away from their earlier heavy, gritty, down-to-earth style. They wanted to experiment with new technology, and experiment they did. Centuries is really the first track to delve into the pop aspect of this album, having hip-hop beats and much more of a pop-rock influenced melody. Its theme is mainly empowering those who are deemed weird in society, saying that they'll do great things that will make the world remember them for, of course, centuries. It's a nice song, no doubt, and probably has one of the best hooks on the entire album. With the next couple of tracks, you'll definitely see what I'm talking about. The Kids Aren't Alright definitely had to be one of my favorite tracks. Apparently, it's the track that the band was most proud of for this album, and it's clear to see why. It's a really cool track with a tight beat and a good deal of poignancy and emotion. It would be easy enough to write this off as a rocky relationship song, but there's a lot more to it. What it's saying throughout the verses and chorus is that the kids aren't alright. In other words, even as kids, we're not going to be happy all the time, and really, nobody's going to be happy all the time, be it a kid or an adult. Eternal happiness is more or less a fantasy, and even though we may get down about things sometimes, that's fine. It's alright to not be alright. Pretty deep stuff, and it's safe to say that the title of this track is a homage to The Who's classic hit, The Kids Are Alright. The Kids Aren't Alright adopted more of an alternative rock style than the previous tracks, but here's where the good stuff comes in. Uma Thurman is easily my favorite track. Why? Well, it's the track that stands out the most in a good way. It's the most unique track, the lyrics are fun, and the samples make it all the more better. As the title suggests, the song is celebrating the actress Uma Thurman, famous for movies such as Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction. The song blends pop rock with surf rock, and that's all thanks to the sample of the theme song from the classic TV show, The Munsters, which we'll get into in a bit. This, in part, makes the song really stand out and gives it a sense of identity among the other tracks. It makes what Patrick Stump said about everything sounding like it's from the same album much clearer, and it's really cool how they managed to fulfill that goal without making each song sound like one another. Now, as I was saying before, Uma Thurman samples the Munsters theme song, and the whole sampling bit actually plays a huge role on this album. Nearly every track samples something in which Fall Out Boy wanted to bring to pop culture that was either dead or really obscure, such as the Munsters and Uma Thurman. Other tracks like the aforementioned title track sample Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love, and Century samples Tom's Diner by Suzanne Vega. This point is a very important one to keep in mind. Fall Out Boy did something totally left field for this project and decided to do what hip-hop artists do, and that's sample to give their music more interesting and appealing touch. Hip-hop music is built on samples, although many rappers and producers these days are creating their own original beats without the use of samples. But Fall Out Boy took an opportunity to use different resources to give their music something special in the rock realm. After Uma Thurman comes Jetpack Blues, which of course has a hip-hop inspired beat and deals with post-breakup distress, but deals with it in a very interesting and unique way, using a jetpack as a metaphor for leaving or flying away from a relationship. And then, regarding it of course, this was also one of my favorite tracks. However, it's not super strong lyrically. The chorus leaves much to be desired, but the melody during the verses is really nice, and so is the shift from soft and melodic to heavy and angsty, giving it almost kind of a grunge influence. Now, Novocaine took me a couple listens to get into. I originally didn't like it that much, but when I heard that I Am the Worst Nightmare part, it just gave me chills, and I liked it more and more with each listen. This is a song of revolution, self-evaluation, and self-discovery. Novocaine is a numbing agent typically used by dentists, and is referenced in the song as something that numbs a person on a quest to find out what love truly is after years and years of searching. It's a really intriguing song and kind of builds on the theme of finding out what love truly is beyond relationships and things of that nature. 4th of July to me was only a decent track. Not bad, just decent. It's a story of a relationship that's being compared to a firework, explosive, be it good or bad, and short. The instrumentation doesn't stand out too much from the other tracks beyond the high-pitched instrument that can be heard in the background and the percussion part. I liked the chord progression, but other than those few things, this track didn't have that much to offer in the standout factor. However, that's not to say that every single track should stand out from one another, but each should have something that gives it its own sense of identity, just as I said with Uma Thurman. It was unique for its sampling, its theme, its instrumentation, and its lyrics. Favorite Record happens to be my girlfriend's favorite track, and I can definitely see why. It has a pretty cute theme of being so in love with someone that you just want to dance and have fun with that person, effectively spinning like a record, and being so in love with someone but never feeling like you're close enough no matter how hard you try. Interesting premise, and the instrumentation and the hook really add to the song, making it among the best on the album. The end of Favorite Record leads straight into the penultimate track, Immortals, giving it a bit of a cinematic and connected feeling. Unfortunately, this is really the only time that this happens on the entire album, which makes it kind of stick out but not in a good way, sticks out in the kind of sore thumb kind of way. Regardless, it's a nice segue all the same. You might have heard this track on the Disney film Big Hero 6 during the suit-up scene. Definitely recommend you check out this movie, by the way. In fact, Disney specifically asked Fall Out Boy to write this song for the movie. According to Patrick Stump, the idea was of a younger brother stepping up in place of his older brother and teaming up with friends in which they are the underdogs. That's basically summing up the film, but you get the idea. Immortals has that typical pop-punk feel and nothing all too interesting about it besides what I've already told you. It's enjoyable, but probably has perhaps the most pop influence out of all the tracks on the album. That's not a bad thing at all. I mean, it is the name of the genre. Regardless, for a song that got a ton of exposure in a Disney film, it doesn't quite live up to some of the other tracks on the album as one might think. However, it does share a lot of similarities with the previous track, Centuries. In fact, I would go as far as to say that they're linked. I mean, even the name Centuries and Immortals share that whole never dying thing, right? So that's a plus, but besides that, only a decent track in my eyes. And now we come to the final track on the album, Twin Skeletons, or Hotel in New York City. Pete Wentz has gone on the record to say that he feels that this is a perfect closing track, and I totally agree. After a bunch of tracks about searching for love, this track about keeping love, hope, and ideals alive seems to be a perfect way to cap off this record. I especially liked the arpeggios near the end that closed the track out. The harmonies alone were quite fun to listen to, actually. The arpeggiated line and the harmonies are somewhat reminiscent of early Beach Boys work. Again, a really effective way to end this record in that it encompasses everything the record was saying throughout and puts a period on it with this track. Overall, you can probably tell that I enjoyed this record quite a bit. It had its rocky points, no doubt, but that didn't stop it from being a really enjoyable listen. The weakest track was definitely and easily 4th of July, because to me it didn't have anything that made it unique compared to everything else, even compared to the title track, which at least had some bits that made it stand out, such as the scale work during the chorus. My favorite tracks were Uma Thurman, Favorite Record, The Kids Aren't Alright, Jetpack Blues, and Novocaine. Those tracks made this album really worthwhile. Unfortunately, Fall Out Boy is coming to a point where they're kind of doing the same thing that a lot of other bands are doing. In terms of bands that I personally listen to and follow, Coldplay has done a lot of the same with their music, which was almost exclusively guitar, piano, bass, and drums. Now, with albums like Miles I Loto, Ghost Stories, and more recently Head Full of Dreams, they're experimenting with different sounds and instruments. Even Maroon 5 has been doing the same thing. That's not to say that what Fall Out Boy is doing is wrong. Experimenting is good, and they're pushing their music even further with each new album. Originality is always important, but it's understandable that it's hard to be original when everyone is doing the same thing, thinking that they're being original. That aside, really, really solid record, and I recommend if you're into pop punk, alternative rock, and maybe even alternative hip-hop. Anyways, that's it for this review. I thank you all for watching, and I want to thank my wonderful girlfriend for requesting. I know it took a long time to get to here, and I apologize, but here it is, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see an album or a song reviewed that you like or may suggest, just leave a comment down below, or you can hit me up on my Facebook or my Twitter. The links are in the description. And make sure you hit that like button if you like this video, and also subscribe if you want to see more. But anyways, this does it for this review, and this is the Afro Avenger signing off. Thank you.